Welcome to the panel room. Today we're going to be discussing planning for writers. But before we get to that, let's go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves. And we'll start with you, Jeannie.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeanne Adams. I write paranormal, romantic suspense, urban fantasy, and space adventures with my friend Nancy Northcott.
Perfect. Venessa.
Hey, my name is Venessa Giunta. I am the author of the urban fantasy Soul Cavern series, and I also write horror, and I am a freelance editor.
Perfect. Gail?
Hi, I'm Gail Z Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write urban fantasy, epic fantasy, steampunk, near future post-apocalyptic, and more. And as Morgan Bryce, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance.
Perfect. And finally, Corinne.
Hi, I'm Corinne. I write fantasy, urban fantasy, and mystery as Corinne, and I have an unouted romance pen name that's super steamy. And I also run Author Productivity, where I do annual planners for authors.
Perfect. And that works perfectly with what we're doing today. So I'm going to throw this out to everyone. And I guess we'll go around one more time here. Just kind of let us know what you typically get out in a year. And that could be, short stories, books, planners, whatever you get out there. And I guess I'll start with you, Venessa.
I've only been publishing myself, doing my own work since about 2018. So I don't have a long history. I've been getting out roughly averaging about 2 novels and 2 short stories every year, as the short stories are part of the novel series. And I've written additional short stories that are outside of that I kind of shop around. So a random number of short stories, more than 2, and a couple novels in a year.
All right. Gail.
Well, I picked up speed since the first book took me 20 years to write, which is a good thing, because there isn't time to write a whole lot at that pace. But this year, despite the current unpleasantness and all of that, I've got 11 new works out, plus several anthologies. That's slow for me because I usually average about 10 pages a day. And this year the words just come slow. So those were shorter pieces. Thought I'd have a few more under my belt, but it just took longer, and I'm grateful that I got any words at all. So I'm sticking to it. Hopefully next year it'll be more, but whatever comes.
Same.
Perfect. Corinne.
I've been publishing since 2016, and I guess I've just been ramping up. And since I launched my steamy romance pen name, I'm doing a lot more because those are shorter than my fantasy stuff. This past year, surprisingly, we were just looking at this last week. I have 15 titles out, so that's 7 novels. And then I have short stories that are my own, and then I have shorts that are in anthologies that are going to be launching other things next year, and then 2 planners. So that was my.
I gotta get on it, man. I gotta get going.
I was surprised. It didn't feel like I was that productive. It felt like it was a struggle the whole year. So.
And this is why I wanted to ask the question, because I know everyone's got a different pace, and part of planning is knowing, what you got to work with. Jeannie, what about you?
In a good year, I usually do 2 full-length novels, and for me, full-length is usually 100,000 words, and 3 or 4 novellas, and then some shorts in there or some anthologies and things. 2020, however, has not been a good year. So I'm hoping that next year, with good planning, will be better. All my planning this year was for naught.
All right, so I guess I will direct this at Gail first, and anyone jump in if you've got something. But it's kind of hard to start on the planning, because I know as a writer, there's more than the writing. Mm-hmm. So what all do you look at when you're doing your planning as a writer? And that, like I said, include everything else that's involved, the editing, the, you know, covers, if you're doing that, your social media, submissions, everything.
So I'm lucky in that my husband is also in the business with me full time. So we tend to pass things back and forth to each other. So we can often have 3 books in different stages of progress where I'm writing one, he's editing one, we've got a 3rd one out to beta readers or the editor, and then we just shuffle them around. So I'd say in terms of prioritizing, a couple of things. One is, what do I owe people that I have a commitment to? So most of what we do now is indie, but we do have 3 series with Falstaff Books, and we do contract all of our audio. Cantor contracts us for audio. So those are some hard commitments where somebody's expecting this. So I have to kind of put those at the front of the queue. Then I try to bring something new in each series out to the best of my ability every year. And that we've got 12 current series at the moment. So that does kind of mean 1 a month. And so then it's kind of, all right, let's alternate the Gail or the Gail and Larry and the Morgan Bryce so that we keep everybody happy. And it's theoretically not too long between books under either pen name. And then there are the extras. You know, I get invited to do an anthology. I get invited to do an original content, prolific works, invitation only giveaway thing. You don't want to pass those up. So then you have to kind of wedge them in and figure out where those go. And then you cross your fingers and you just kind of hope that nothing major screws this up, which could be anything from getting sick or, in a normal year, travel, or just getting stuck on something and the words don't come. So you have your best case. I just redid my outline for next year, hopeful, and we'll see, what they say. Like the saying says, we plan, God laughs. It's kind of like that. But that's kind of how I take it first is, who do I owe? And then what is due to have a new release that people have been waiting on, and then where does everything else fit in between the cracks? It's not real scientific, but it does tend to keep me out of trouble, mostly.
Perfect. Now I noticed you were nodding along with the anthology invites, Corinne. Is that something?
It is, and I'm 100% indie. So for me, it's about self-control, because I have this. Well, yes, I'm a community builder. Like, you want me to be part of your group? I would love to be part of your group. Yes. So like Gail, I have commitments that are for other people, like other editors that are doing anthologies, and I've been invited into these other projects. And for me, I also just did my next year, actually I did my next 2-year schedule, because I had this kind of come to Jesus with myself this year about burnout, and kind of reassessed my goals. And for me now, planning starts off with like what I'm willing to do and versus what I'm capable of doing. And I can write up to 8,000 words a day without dying, but I don't, because I don't want to. So if I set a pace of 3,000 words a day, that's gives me time to actually cook food for the people in the house and walk the dogs and do all the things that I have to do other than the business of authoring and marketing. And with that in mind, I put the things that are required on the schedule first, and when those things are due, and then I work my way back and fill the holes, which I think that is actually quite scientific, Gail. I would have to push back on your deprecating comment, but for me, it's a matter of how hard I'm willing to push, because I refuse to go into this from a place of like stress. Like, I think it's possible to run your author business from a place of calm. And when you know exactly what you're capable of and what you're willing to give, then you can figure out whether or not you can take those invitations up or not. So that's how I approach it.
Perfect. Jeanne, Venessa, either?
I think some of that comes from, some of my planning comes from a corporate background. And so both what Gail said and what Corinne said, in terms of putting down on paper, it's always important for me to put it down on paper because I'm really visual. I've got to see it written to be able to even wrap my brain around it. but putting those sort of big things in first, the things that you owe people, or the things that you really want to get out, or what's next. And then backing out from that to say, how much time, like Corinne said, how much time do I want to devote to this? How much time do I need to reserve for, as Corinne said, the other humans in the household and the dogs and everybody else? And, in a normal year, how much time do I have in between other commitments? Like, hey, I got invited to be Dragon Con again. Yay. And I have to prepare for that, and backing that out, putting that in. And, in a normal year, if I'm looking at the whole year, a lot of times, as Stephen Covey would say, I put the big rocks in first. I put where the conferences are. And so I know, okay, I need some lead up time to that to plan for going and travel and doing all of that. And then I need some recovery time.
Yeah.
And then what's the space in between? And for me, I have my oldest son is a Division I baseball player. So all of the baseball has to go on the calendar too, because he's only going to be a Division I college baseball player one time. So I want to be there. So having those kind of big benchmarks in there, those are super important to me. But Corinne, I really get what you're saying, is you kind of have to say, all right, if I don't want to burn out on this and go completely out of my mind, I know what I can do. What am I willing to do?
Because it's
And
possible to
sometimes,
lose your mind.
and sometimes saying no is what you need to do. And I'm not very good at that.
So for me, my first step of planning is always looking back at last year and seeing what I did, what challenges came up, 2020, and a tree falling on my house, and, like all this craziness. So as I mentioned, I've only actually been publishing my own stuff since 2018. 2019, I had rotator cuff surgery in February. And I don't know if you know about that, but you're immobilized for at least a month to 2 months, right? And so like that threw off my whole year. All the stuff I planned last year also went up in smoke. This year, we all know what happened. All the stuff I planned went up in smoke, right? So I look back and I see what I did, because I think that also, I think what you said earlier, Corinne, that you don't always know what you've actually accomplished until you actually go back and take stock of it. So, so that's always my first step. And then my next step is to do basically what Jeannie said, is look at the upcoming year, look at what things, do I have to go to a wedding, and do I have to, like, what are the big things that are happening? Is it my stepdad's 80th birthday, and, like, crazy stuff, right? So I look at that, conferences and conventions. I'm, as Gail knows at least, and Corinne, too, I'm pretty heavily involved in the con scene. And so so I do all of that as well. I do want to also bring up, it sounds like we all, does anybody have a day job? No, okay, so we all do writing, right? So we have this, I run a writers group called the Writing Tribe on Facebook, and we actually have Sunday night Zoom calls where we vote on what we want to discuss. And this past Sunday, they actually voted on, planning the next year, which of course makes sense because it's the end of the year. But one of the things somebody brought up is, all the things that we've been talking about are awesome if you don't have a day job, right? So I think that comes in under what everybody's kind of been saying, is like, look at what time you have to devote to it. Right. And, it all comes down to prioritizing. If it's more important for you to, keep up on the most current version of your favorite TV show, then that's your priority, and that's okay. But then for every time we say yes, we have to say no to everything else. So it comes down to prioritizing, I think, as far as when you're planning what time you have.
Yep.
Well, and you made a very good point, Venessa, is that it's like, if you do the thing where you're looking at your calendar and you're putting in the big things that have to be done, the day job that pays the bills is the big thing that has to be done in your family and those sorts of things. And if you are a writer, and anybody who's trying to do this, no matter how few or how many words you put on the page, you're a writer. If you can devote 2 hours a week to it, schedule those 2 hours and devote 2 hours a week to it. If you can devote 20, great. But I mean, I'm sure all of us, and I know Gail especially, we all started this when we had day jobs.
Right.
And so you squeeze it in where you can, whether you're the 4:30 a.m. Writers Club or 5 a.m. Writers Club group, like some people.
I was the lunchtime writers group.
Yeah, or Sunday afternoons, you know, I
That
mean,
also goes
you
back to knowing how much you can do in whatever time. Like I can write 1,000 words an hour, and that's solid, clean writing. Yeah, I can go faster, but it's a mess. So if I say I can do 3,000 words a day, I know I need 3 hours to do my thing, and then the rest is, you know, whatever else has to happen in the day. So I think that if you only get to do it for 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, half an hour a day, if you know what you can do, you can then slate out your schedule. You know what the
Right.
expectations are for yourself. So
well,
Yeah,
and I
I mean-
think that's, oh, sorry, Gail, go ahead.
When I was writing the book that became The Summoner, I was working full-time in corporate. I had 3 children under 8. And so my husband and I traded off who put the kids to bed, and every other night I got to write for that time. And then I am not a morning person. Jeannie knows this, but I got up at 5:30 in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays so that I could get, and we had a deal that he'd get breakfast for, you know, for the kids when everybody finally woke up, so that I could squeak out another couple of hours. I don't get up that early for anything, except it was how I was going to get it done. And, you know, it worked.
yeah.
I don't do it now because I don't have to.
If you don't have,
I always thank my lucky stars I don't have to do that anymore, but I did the same thing, got up early, and then I made a deal, my husband and I made the deal that Tuesday nights were mine. So Tuesday night, from the time he got home, which was usually 6:30 or 7, until I decided to turn it off and go to bed, were mine. And of course, you know, that usually ended up being around 1 or 2, but with the full well knowing that I had to be up at 6 to get kids to school, sometimes it was more like midnight. But I guess all of this is to say it's not, you know, uphill both ways in the snow. It's that you can do it even if you have a day job. You just have to plan and prioritize accordingly and fit the cogs in where you can.
Yeah, it's all relative. Yeah, it just goes to planning. If you take a look at it and you're realistic about it, I think that anything is really possible as long as you look at it with an eye for what you're willing to give to it, you know?
So-
Well, and even now, I mean, there's a reason I'm not caught up on every show on Netflix, and it's because if it's on because Larry's watching it, I'm kind of looking over the top of my computer if I haven't made my numbers or if I'm working on the promotions and the Facebook and stuff. I've watched one show really closely, and you guys all know what that one is. And everything else is just sort of, I missed it. But I missed it voluntarily because I'd rather write. So, you know, it's kind of a trade-off. I wanted to come back to what Jason said in the first question, which was he also kind of lumped in there the social media and the marketing and all of that. So I do a lot of that because my day job was marketing, and I got my MBA way back. So because someday I wanted to write books, and when I did, I wanted to be able to market them. It just took another 20 years for that to happen.
Changed.
But it has been really helpful. Like I said, I'm not a morning person, so mornings are my administrative time. That's when I do everything from bookkeeping to paying bills to making Canva graphics to scheduling ads, that kind of stuff. I enjoy Facebook, so getting on there is sort of like the water cooler break for me. And I run 3 really active groups, a writer's group for the Gail and Larry stuff, a writer's group for the Morgan and Bryce stuff, and then my Supernatural fan group. So those are a priority. And then in March, you know, we started this little online convention, and that's a priority. And so those things happen in my mornings. And then I try to get the writing time in mid-afternoon into the evenings. But yeah, that takes several hours a day. It's not always the same set of tasks, but especially this year, normally some of that time would be on the road and at conventions.
Mhm.
Well, if you don't want to drop off the radar when there aren't physical conventions, you have to make up for it somehow. So for me, that was doing not only continual, but I think I was a guest at like 8 virtual conventions this year. I'm on podcasts. That's why I jump into some of the anthologies and shared prolific work stuff, because it's not only collaboration and building the community, but it's also visibility.
Mhm.
And you've got to take the opportunities when the situation is like it is now that you get, because your normal doors are closed for the moment. And so that's been a wonderful opportunity when they come, but it's one more thing to work around when you're still trying to get words on page.
I think it's important to note that if you're just starting out, getting the words on the page is the most important thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the marketing. Don't worry about that, any of that other stuff. Just get the words on the page and plan for that. It's later when you have to start thinking about, okay, now the steps come in of, if you don't do it, if you're not lucky enough to have a Larry, the book has to be, once the book is done, it has to go to a copy editor and a real editor and a copy editor and a beta reader, and it has to go to formatting, and you have to have a cover, and you have all those steps that you have to do. Those have to be planned in too. But if you're just starting out, plan time to get the words on the page.
Mhm.
Is it also important, though, when you're doing that, to start building your tribe, in a sense, to use Venessa's writing tribe, so that there will be a market for your book once you do get it done?
I say yes.
Yes.
I started building my newsletter list when I decided to write a book, and it was like, hey, follow me on my journey, kind of a thing. But like Gail, I think it was Gail said, I also have a marketing background, so I was aware of the value of the tribe, or you want those people to be there when it's time, but you want them to be with you because they want to be there, right? So you get them invested in the beginning. So yeah, I think that if I were to tell somebody brand new starting today, I would say, figure out a place to do a single 1-page website with a subscription box, and then just talk about it and just get them online.
Well, and if you're trying to pitch something, now we're all doing a lot of things indie, and I started out traditional. Nowadays, if you're pitching a traditional publisher, they want you to have a platform, i.e. a following, before you ever have a book.
Yep.
Because that's, in their minds, a bunch of people who are going to run out on day one and buy your book, and that starts the ball rolling. So what I tell folks is, well, what do you talk about when you don't have a book? Find something you are passionate about. Maybe it's knitting, maybe it's supernatural, maybe it's sports, whatever it is, and create a group around that out of your honest passion. Now, it helps if there's some link between your passion and what you write about. Like if you write hockey romance and you've created a hockey group, good. Now you've got some reciprocity. Because those are people that when you let it drop, oh, and I'm working on a book, after they've gotten to know you, they're going to say, oh yeah, well, tell us about it. And then they're going to want updates, and then they'll cheer you on. But it starts because you don't come at them going, hey, I want a book. I'm writing a book. Someday, do you want to buy it? It's
Right.
You bond over the shared love of hockey.
You're already
Right.
a friend,
Right. Well, because it's you that they're buying,
Yeah.
Right.
not your book.
Right.
not your, because you're going to write more than one book,
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing that, Gail, you bring up a point too, though, is if you are a writer out there and you want to pitch a traditional publisher, one of the reasons I focus so much on get the words on the pages is not only do they want to know whether you have a following, they want to know what else you have.
Right.
Mhm.
So like Gail, I started out with a traditional publisher, and the first question my editor asked me when she asked me to pitch to her was, tell me what you got. All right, what else have you got? All right, what else have you got beyond that?
Mm-hmm.
And only because I had and this was years ago, and only because I had 3 or 4 or 5 books written, manuscripts written, they were willing to talk to me, and then they bought that book and I got several contracts out of them. But it's not ever just one book. And so getting the words on the page so that you have something to market. Yeah. But also you're absolutely right. Starting to build an audience, whether that's in a hobby you love that you can then say, hey, and by the way, I'm writing this book, is also super important these days. But you got to have something else to sell once you sell the first one.
Right. That's right.
Right.
I also, to go back, Gail was talking about her schedule, like how she does mornings, she does her admin stuff. I also, I actually batch stuff. So on Mondays are my nonfiction writing. Like I write my newsletters, I write my Patreon posts. If I'm going to write something on Medium, which I'm getting ready to start doing, you know, other things that are not specifically book fiction related, I do that on Mondays. And then, and if it takes me all day, it takes me all day. If I don't get any fiction writing, that's fine. Because again, like I'm full-time, right? So I don't have a day job. So, but I also do freelance editing. So I have to kind of balance, because, you know, that pays the bills too. So kind of balance. But generally speaking, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is, I might spend the morning, because my best time is usually in the afternoon and evening. I might spend the morning, like if I didn't get everything done on Monday, I might get caught up, but it's mostly fiction. And then Friday, I schedule my social media. I do take time every day to go into my groups. Like I mentioned, I have the Writing Tribe, and I'm pretty active in there. And there are a couple other places, the Continual group, I'm occasionally active there, and Multiverse I'm active in. And I'll check those every day. But like, as far as things that go up, like posts, I do a lot of posts about writing because I run the Writing Tribe. And so even on my Twitter, I do a lot of writing posts, not my posts, but like links, right, to other interesting articles and stuff like that. I schedule all that on Friday. I pay my bills on Friday. I do any kind of finance stuff on Friday. I do any changes to Amazon ads or anything like that. I do all that on Friday. I may or may not get fiction done on Friday, but that's okay, you know? So, and then the weekend I usually spend playing catch up, because I always plan to do more than I actually get done. So there's that, right? So it's interesting, like there are different ways that, like, whatever works for you is what works for you. And I think it's important that, especially if someone's just starting out, to try different things. Like they may be a person who can get up at 5:30 in the morning to write before anybody gets up, but that may, like, for somebody else, that may be like, oh yeah, I've never been willing to get up early to write. I've never had to, but I don't have kids. So I didn't, even when I was working corporate, I didn't have to worry about that. I could come home and be like, husband, go make your own dinner and like do my thing. Right. So, like, that's been my life. But if I had kids, maybe I would be, but I would stay up till 3 a.m. writing, you know? So I think it trying a lot of different things is really important. I've been doing that, like 2019, my plan, I've changed some things I tried to change some things in 2020. And then I've seen what worked for me when work got done and what didn't. So I will carry that forward into 2021, and I'll try other different things. It's all about tweaking and figuring out what works for you.
Absolutely. I mean, was it you, Corinne, or one of you, either Venessa or Corinne, were saying that you sort of have to look back at what worked?
Yeah.
I do that every single year. I sit down and go, well, that didn't work.
I do that every week. I do. I have a weekly review that I go through, and it's like, okay, what worked? What didn't work?
Yeah.
You know?
And I can't tell you all how many planners I've tried, different planners, just to see what keeps me on track. And, you know, Corinne, I know you say you created them.
What? What are you talking about?
I'm going to look at yours too, Corinne, because I actually, the last couple of years, I've used this one.
Yes, I've seen that one. At Dragon Con, actually.
Yeah, and I really liked it, but I really only use the first part of it because I don't actually use the daily planner things. But I still buy it because I really like, because the whole first part of it is about looking back. And
right.
right? And that's so important. And then it talks about like, what are your goals? And that's important. I think that's one of the biggest things. Once you've looked back and seen what's worked, I think the next big thing is you have to figure out what you want. What do you want to do? Oh, I want to be an author and I want to have published books. Okay. But
Right.
what does that look like?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I was going to ask that with goals specifically, how do you push yourself and still make them realistic?
Well, can I slip
Oh,
in
yeah.
one before we change topic? I was going to say one of the things that helps a lot with productivity and feeling like, you know, you've really maximized your investment is looking at how you can reuse something you write for one thing somewhere else.
Yes.
So I very rarely accept an anthology invitation unless I can write a story in one of my existing book universes. Because then when the anthology reverts, whether that's in 90 days or 2 years, I've got a short story that I can use as a reader magnet on Prolific Works, that I can put in a collection of my own short pieces, that I can use as a giveaway reward. I'm going to use the heck out of that piece, and it's going to get me newsletter subscribers, and it's going to work hard for me.
Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
No wasted words. No
That's
wasted
right.
words.
I started writing a reaction to Entertainment Weekly ranked the top 75 episodes of Supernatural of all time, in their opinion. I started writing a reaction piece. When I saw how much time it was going to take me season by season, I went to my friend who's the managing editor at Winchester Family Business, which is the big fan blog for Supernatural, and said, would you be interested in a short series on this? But what I mean is,
Wow.
those articles not only are just on my Facebook group, now they're reaching a much larger audience on the Winchester Family Business and kind of filling a hole for them on additional content, particularly during hiatus. So when you do that, then some of these little extra things become much more valuable than if they were just a one-off. And so that's something to always look for. How many other ways can I use this? If I can't use it in other ways, it has to be a really good friend who's asking me to be in the anthology, or it has to be a really good opportunity to do something out of that pattern. And it happens, but it's got to have other value.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of piggyback on that, to answer Jason's question about goals, to stay, like, I think that it's really, really smart to face your goal setting very strategically. I think that this is a business, you know, yes, it's creative and it's wonderful and we want to tell our stories and build our universes, but you know, you can't deviate. So you have to have your plan, and your plan should be strategic. So if you are gonna, like, I signed up for something that's completely outside of the realm of what, like, most of the stuff I write in both of my pen names is mostly witches and paranormal somehow. And I signed up to do a Greek god thing, which is going to be so much fun. It's a Greek god motorcycle club. And it doesn't fit with anything I'm doing, but it's going to be a reader magnet because it's still my style and my thing. It'll be fun, whatever. So, but I did that as a strategic choice. Like, yes, that's something that'll fit, and it's the people that I want to work with and those kinds of things. But I think that the way that you stay on track with your goals is to, like, I have like pie in the sky goals. And then I have like, okay, so if everything went perfect, and like Venessa, like I didn't have rotator cuff surgery and I didn't have to cancel all my travel or whatever happens. And then I had like a second tier, like, but I'll accept this level of completion. So I have kind of like goals and like stretch goals. Like you talk about like sales goals in the corporate world. So, and again, it all boils down to, for me, you know, looking at the time and the space and what I'm capable of and what I'm willing to do. If I maintain, for me, it's always about the slow burn. Like I am a very high energy, jumping with both feet kind of person. And I know that if I don't temper myself, I will overdo it and I will burn out and I'll take on too much. So I have to really be methodical about what I plan. But I also plan low. I plan to write less than I can so that I have room for those fun things that always come up, you know? So.
And also, if you end up writing more, it's a pleasant surprise.
It
It's like,
is.
look, I'm ahead.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and my plan for the year, like I have many different, I have them on my wall, I have them, but I have a spreadsheet, and basically what it has, it's basically the writing hopper, and I have the list of all the things in the order in which they have to be produced.
Mhm.
And if I write ahead, they just pop off the list and the next one pops up like a Pez.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what the due dates are. I don't take a break. I move everything up and I just keep on going. Like if I take a break, I'll dive into Supernatural. I haven't ever watched that show because it came out at a time in my life. I have 4
Oh,
little
it's cool.
like, yeah.
It's just very exciting how much you have in front of you.
I know,
Yeah,
but it's
that's
such a
why
commitment.
That's why I have never watched all of Buffy yet, because anything in the 90s I didn't see unless it was on PBS Kids or Nickelodeon, because I
Yeah.
had 3 children under.
Yeah, and I had
I
4
didn't
under 5. So it's like, diapers and breastfeeding for 9 years. So I was like, I'm not watching that. I can't catch up. And now I'm way behind. But honestly, like you have to know what it is that you're willing to do and how much you can do. And so for me, I call myself like the lazy writer. Like I under plan so that I can.
Nothing you have said strikes me as lazy writer.
Well, but it goes back to the corporate thing of under promise and over deliver.
I under promise to myself.
Yes.
And then
you
I'm
over deliver.
so pleasantly surprised
That's
by
called
myself.
mind fucking yourself.
Yeah,
Myself. Did you see what I did last year?
But I think it goes back to fundamentally what you were talking about, Jason, is you actually do have to set goals. I mean, that's the fundamental thing, is you have to be willing to not only set a goal, but as Corinne says, set a stretch goal too, and say, okay, I'm going to do this. And even if this is just, the minimum, I'm going to do this. And if I can really get my mess in a pile and get it in gear, I'm going to go here. And if I really don't have rotator cuff surgery in 2020 doesn't happen, I've got what we used to call BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. I've got this really big stretch goal out here.
I'll write that down. BHAGs.
Yes,
Yeah.
big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yes.
But you have to write it down. You have to know what it is, because you can't hit a target that you don't know what it is. And I think that if you write those down, even if you do nothing else but write those down, that gets you started. And another thing you sort of touched on, Jason, was you kind of, and Corinne did as well, you kind of have to know where your sweet spot is. Like Gail, you said you're not a morning person. I so am not a morning person, which is why Gail and I make great roommates at conferences. But for me, I don't kind of hit on until about 10 a.m. and several cups of coffee. And so my best time slot is between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, and 10 at night and 2 in the morning. And if I can hit those sweet spots, I can crank out a lot of words without feeling stretched or stressed or wigged out or anything. This year's been really challenging because there are 3 other people breathing in and out in this house between 10 and 2. And it's like making noise and breathing and clanking and, gotta adjust.
That's right.
But knowing where your sweet spots are, and Venessa, you said this, you just kind of have to try stuff.
Yeah.
And look at it and go, that didn't work. Oh, that really worked. Nope, not that one.
Not that one. Yeah, I did that with, I tried.
Go ahead.
I was going to say along those lines, I tried really hard last year. I thought, okay, I'm going to start going by real people hours, and I'm going to get up at like 7:30 and 8 o'clock, and I'm going to go to bed at like, 11 o'clock. And yeah, that doesn't work for me.
We're all shaking our heads. So that, Venessa, that kind of actually touches on what I was going to say. Like there's a whole lot of should. Like everybody is told what we should be doing, and I think that like something that we've all been talking about when we are doing what we're doing, it's like what works for me, what works for me, what works for me. And you have to be okay with experimenting to the place, like I try every like Trello and Asana and all those places online. Like I need it on paper, full stop. Like I need to write it down. It needs to be here next to my desk. It'll like other people can't deal with paper, right? So I think that you have to be able to experiment knowing that you're only going to keep the things that work for you. But you also need to be able to set the goals with the expectation that it's okay if you have to let them go. You know, like, I don't think there's any, like for me, I was always indie. I never went trad. I never had a desire to go trad. So I don't play well with others. So I'm very much an independent person, but I definitely want to get the things that I want to get done. And if they don't get done, I beat myself up about it. But now I think that it's, the realistic piece is, do you really have to understand that you are the boss, but you have to treat it like a business and be the boss at the same time, being able to pivot and make it okay. Because I think that, like, there's so much advice about what we should be doing, and everybody, you know, hangs on to these things and expectations. And I think that, you know, as if I was going to talk to a new writer, I'd be like, look, figure out what works for you. And when it stops working for you, change. Like, nothing.
Or
stays.
even try things continually, you know, stick with what works for you, but don't be afraid to try something a little bit different, because you can never know what's going to work better for you if you're only ever doing the same thing.
Right, exactly.
Well,
And
I think one of the things that has been kind of a learning point for me this year is a big surprise. I'm kind of a type A. I have a long laundry list. I'm driven. I had to learn to forgive myself for missing goals
Yes.
and be able to say, you know, this is a hard year, and putting words on paper, tapping that creativity comes harder than usual. If I only got 5 pages today, I got 5 pages and I moved it along. That's progress. It's okay. And not beat myself up about it, because that serves no purpose. And I think the other thing is that whole carrot and the stick thing. Try, when you're planning your projects, try to alternate ones that are going to be hard and easy. So some stories, some books, some assignments are going to be more difficult, more time consuming, more complex. Others, especially like if you're coming back to write another story in an established series where you know everybody and it's like coming home, you can knock that out pretty easy, and it feels like fun. Don't give yourself all the hard ones in a row. Give yourself a hard one, an easy one, a hard one, an easy one. Throw in one of those passion projects that you're just doing because you want to do it.
Right.
And that kind of, it feeds the well. It gives you your creativity back from when you've had to slog. And it keeps you fresh, just switching back and forth among those things, instead of saying, I'm going to, you know what they say, eat a toad first thing in the morning, nothing worse can happen to you the rest of the day. Don't try to eat all your toads on the same morning. You know, space them out. Have some candy in between toads.
I'm just going to go for the candy.
so that kind of leads in a little bit, based on something that Corinne was saying and Gail mentioned just now, allowing yourself, I guess, the forgiveness of not succeeding at a goal. But how do you set that up in such a way that you aren't constantly going, well, I just didn't get it today. Well, didn't get it today either, to the point where the goals don't mean anything to you.
I think a lot.
You have no idea of the extent of my internal anxiety and guilt, do you?
I think a lot depends, though, on what's happening. I think, you know, if you're driven, if this is really what you want to do, you're only going to let yourself do that for a certain amount of time. Let me tell you, I took the entire month of March this year. Like, I got no words in March at all. Like, I got zippo. I watched RuPaul's Drag Race the whole month.
Oh, that's awesome.
It really was. But, you know, it's because I needed downtime, right? It was too much. I was overwhelmed. There was too much stuff going on. And I felt really crappy about it for quite a long time. But one of the things that I learned from, I have quite a number of friends who are in recovery for alcoholism, addiction, that kind of thing. And one of the things that I've learned from them is to sit with feelings, obviously. And, you know, if I'm feeling something, I'm feeling something, right? If I'm feeling guilty, I'm feeling guilty. But at some point, I have to ask myself, all right, is this serving me? Is this Like, is it pushing me forward? Is it making me a better person? Is it making me more compassionate, more whatever? And if it's not doing anything but making me feel crappy, all right, then
Gotta let it go.
exactly. I've got to just, and sometimes that's just strictly an act of will. Sometimes it's just like, I am done thinking about this. I'm just done, you know? And, you know, sometimes you've just got to be like, all right, I'm going to get 3 words today. That's my goal. And, you know, and then you work up from there. I mean, and I say that having not written a word of fiction in the last 3 weeks.
But see, that's how it goes. I honestly, I think that what you said at the beginning of what your answer was the key to that. Like, if you want it and you want it bad enough, it's going to become a priority at some point. I had a conversation with, I had a coaching call earlier. I don't even, it was sometime this past, wow, I can't even frame it in time.
Blur
But,
day.
yeah.
Blur day. It was blur day.
On one of those days, and my friend Michelle, and what she said to me has stuck with me, and I have post-it notes all over my wall with like fabulous inspiration and like, you know, wonderful anecdotes. You have an infinity of recovery available to you, and that's really like every day is the next new day, right? But like, I think that one of the best ways that I handle missing goals and, you know, trying new things, and I don't really deal in guilt so much as I feel like, you know, I use the word lazy, like I'm just so lazy, because I can totally, like, you know, stop doing what I'm doing and just start watching Supernatural tomorrow and just not come up for air.
Same.
Yeah, so I think having an experimental mindset is really, really important. I think approaching everything as a test. Let's see how this goes. Let's see if this works. If this doesn't work, I'm going to try something new. And there's no success or failure. It's really just whether or not you've made progress. And if you haven't made progress, it's because what you're doing isn't working. So if you really want it and you're willing to try different things, I think that if you go at it without being so cemented and rigid, but also understand that you have an infinity of recovery available to you. Like, I think it's just an elegant way to say that. And it's like, I haven't forgotten it. Like, when she said it to me, I wrote it. I'm like, stop talking. I have to write this down. Like, it was,
I have to write this down.
It was a really powerful phrase. And it stuck with me because we really do have an infinity of recovery. We can start over, start where you are every second.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think sometimes you have to have the mindset of, okay, I did not do what I wanted to do yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It's today. What am I going to do today? And I think too, I mean, maybe I'm just a little anal retentive, but one of the things I do is I literally plan a goof off day every month.
That's smart.
I put it in my schedule. I'm goofing off this day. I'm going to do absolutely nothing that resembles work in any way. Because as writers, especially those of us who are not working a more set day job, the time becomes amorphous, even more this year than others, but it really does. Saturday and Sunday don't have a lot of meaning unless you say, I'm only going to work Monday through Friday. So I schedule a goof off day. I schedule a reading day twice a month because you got to refill the well. You've absolutely got to make sure you're still reading.
Mm-hmm.
And if that well is, I'm going to binge watch this series on Netflix, great, because it's still storytelling. It's still refilling the well. I schedule research days. And I do that because sometimes what I want to research doesn't have anything to do with what I'm writing. But sometimes you just want to know what the origin of trinitrotoluene is.
Or, you know,
as you do.
Or the earliest female serial killer.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And I also schedule, I have one of my other hobbies that kind of takes my brain in a completely different direction is genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
So I schedule genealogy days because otherwise they get lost and I never, you know, and that's just like doing puzzles. Those people are dead. They're going to still be dead tomorrow and for the rest of eternity probably. But those puzzle pieces, sometimes working on that unhinges my brain enough in another way. And that sounds really strange, I know. But then I come back to the story refresh and I come back to the writing refreshed without ever losing my sense. I don't put myself into the guilt. I don't put myself into the pain because I scheduled that day. That day
Right.
was scheduled for that purpose, and therefore I was not expecting to
You
put
are
words on the page.
absolved of any wrongdoing.
You
To
succeeded.
absolve, exactly.
Yes, and you succeeded at doing nothing.
I
Yeah,
did.
and in a normal year, I go on a couple of vacations. My beach vacation is usually me with my butt in a chair underneath an umbrella because I burn. But I can see the ocean from here. I'm just tucked in the shadows with, a full burst and Kindle, and that's my free time to just binge read and not do anything and be a tourist. And since I tend to set series in places we go on, we travel too frequently, there's always some book research, but hey, it's touristy stuff. So it's book research, but it's also fun. And then in a normal year, there's also the conventions, which you've got travel time. You've got the time at the conventions, which is not writing time, but it's refilling time.
So
And this year has been hard because didn't do the vacations, didn't do the cons, and I was producing slower than usual enough that I didn't feel like I could still take that time because I was already behind. And that's been something I'm still kind of wrestling with this year is finding that balance. And I don't have it yet.
It's hard. It's
and
been a hard-
everything's
it's been
going to
a hard time.
change, in the next 6-8 months again. So
Right.
there's going to be always refinding balance, I think.
So let's, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. I was actually going to talk a little bit more about like actual scheduling, because we talked about big goals, but then like the other thing I do, I'll schedule my year, but then I'll break it down into quarters. And it's like, this quarter, I'm going to work on these things. And this quarter, I'm going to work on these things. And this quarter, I'm going to work on these things. And obviously some stuff overlaps because, you're writing a book, you're not going to release it that same quarter, most likely, so like it all kind of spreads out a little bit, but then it gives me, and if I don't stick exactly to it, because you can't know what's going to happen 3, 6, 8 months down the road, it's okay, but I have it. And then if I need to make adjustments, I can make adjustments. I have it on the page. I know what the plan is. If the plan changes, that's fine. I can change the plan. That's not a problem, but I can't change. It's just like writing a book, right? I can't fix it if it's not on the page. If I'm looking at a blank, the only way to fix a blank page is to put something on it. It's, the same thing. You can't, if you've got goals and you don't actually have any, just at least a general plan of how to get there, you're not going to be able to pivot when you need to pivot, right?
It have to be measurable and trackable.
Yeah.
And I
that
think
brings me,
that comes up is protecting your time. So I know that my afternoons and evenings are my most productive time.
Mhm.
So I try my darndest to schedule doctor's appointments and dentist appointments and anything I can schedule, I try to put in the morning because that's administrative, real people time for me. And then it's over and done with before it gets into my writing time. Doesn't always work, but it keeps most of those days from getting chopped up, because if you've got 3 appointments during the time you would be writing, you're not going to get any writing done. Your brain's just not going to be there. So once you figure out your sweet spots for your time, then you also have to be pretty protective of that time to not let other things just nibble it away.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
do the
and-
same thing, Gail. I schedule all of my outside of the house appointments and things like that are always on Wednesdays. Because it seems like everybody's open on Wednesdays. I don't have to worry about the Friday thing. But yeah, it's because it works. Because I know that for me, I get up and I do my thing and I have my morning thing. And then I get to the computer by 9. Like, cause I'm like Venessa, I can't get there, without I have to ramp up into my morning. But writing has to be the first thing I do. And if I don't do it first, I'm useless for writing later on in the day. So I have a whole day where I'm wasting my day doing doctor's appointments and getting kids where they need to be and other things out of the house, because I can't do it if I do it in the morning or the afternoon of a day.
And that's batching too, just
Yeah.
like talking about you do all your appointments on Wednesday. So Jeannie, I'm sorry, I know you were.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was going to say, I don't know about y'all, but I'm a raging extrovert. So for me, in any other year but this one, it's very quiet in the house. And I have to be very careful because I I schedule my administrative stuff in the morning as well, but there are real people on Facebook and Twitter to talk to. And sometimes I'm bouncing in my seat going, who can I talk to? Who can I talk to? Who can I talk to? So I do what Corinne was just talking about. I schedule, back to the scheduling again, because I'm always about, I have to live by my calendar. Otherwise I get nothing done. I schedule once a week to go meet somebody for lunch, usually on Wednesdays, because hump day, happier than a witch in a broom factory. But I do that so that because I know it's like Gail was talking about that sweet spot. I know that if I get the middle of the week, I know that I've got somebody that I'm going to go have lunch with. Then I don't sit and go, who can I talk to? Who can I talk to? I know that on Wednesday, I'm going to go talk to somebody and I will have, social contact. Ooh, cool. And so a lot of it, I think, for planning and everything is, yes, knowing your goals, but also that sweet spot that you're talking about, that we've all been talking about. When do you work best? And like Venessa was talking about, a lot of it is trial and error. You got to figure it out by doing it. You just got to go, okay, not good at 9 o'clock at night, not good at 5 in the morning. The words don't come at 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I mean, I did it when I had to do it. You put the words on the page if that's the only time you've got. But if I have my druthers, not at 5 a.m.
My co-writer and I discovered that we are masters at creating blurbs after midnight on the phone together in a shared document. It's like magic happens. And it sort of was a desperate act that turned into a habit.
And you never would have known that. The other thing we've been talking about, and to kind of just piggyback on what you're saying, Jeannie, is, figuring out your time. And Corinne, you've mentioned a number of times, like what you can do. And you said, I can write 1,000 clean words in an hour. And that's another thing you have to figure out. So back in, I don't know, the mid 20 teens, I was doing NaNoWriMo, right, as you do. And I was using Write or Die. It was actually before that, but I was using Write or Die, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Basically, you tell it how long you want to write and how many words you want to put down. And when you hit start, it will penalize you in some way that you choose if you stop writing for more than X amount of time, like 15 seconds or something. So if you're sitting there just staring at the screen, something happens, whatever it is. What I learned doing that is that I can actually write, if I'm going balls to the wall, I can write 2,000 words in an hour, and they're relatively clean. They're not great, but they're not horrible. So like that, it was a love-hate relationship with that particular observation, because then I was like, oh, I don't have any excuse not to get my 1,667
right
words.
Right.
That's like an hour. But what that did is it showed me that I actually can write, even if, obviously you're not going to write balls to the wall every single time you sit down to write, but I could easily get 1,000 clean words in an hour, right? I can do that. I can get 1,500 words, and 1,500 is probably my average, in an hour. So now I know that, okay, if I can block off 2 hours during the day, that is at least 3,000 words, right? So, that's part of figuring out what you can do. Yes. I think it's important to make that assessment in addition to when is your most productive time to get words out.
Well, and one of the other things that plays into that is we talked about, the social media and the writing part, but the prep part, whether that's research, whether that's outlining, whether that is staring into the distance and trying to figure out what your character's favorite food actually is so that you can get to know them better. When I find myself getting stuck, I'm not really stuck. I just haven't, there's something I don't know about the book that I need to know to move forward. Yeah. And so the better I outline and think through that stuff to the best that I can up front, the faster I can write when I have my time to write, because I've already figured out those speed bumps. I don't have to sit there and unsnarl them in real time, staring at a screen. And that is a key thing to being productive, is giving yourself that time up front, whatever it is for you, to really outline and research and have as much that you can predict you'll need sitting there. It's kind of like if you're starting a recipe, you want to have all your ingredients on the counter. You don't want to find out in the middle of the recipe you don't have butter.
Right.
Right.
And cook
Right.
much
I
faster.
never don't have butter.
Well, I mean, like
But
if I can write 3,000 words a day and I have a 30,000 word goal, I don't set a 10-day limit. I send like a 15-day limit because I know I need to sit and percolate and I need to plot. Like you do, you have to be realistic. And I also consider all of that is writing time. Like
Yeah.
it might not be word time, but all of that counts as in that window of writing. Because yeah, you don't just sit down and produce. Like I'm not a chicken that pops an egg out and there it is, you know, like I'm an outliner and I have a whiteboard and I'm constantly redoing the whiteboard and I'm rethinking and then what ifing, and then I'm calling my girlfriend at 1 o'clock in the morning to like, hey, okay, so I thought it was this, but I think it's this. You know, all of that counts. And I think that you need to, again, and that's also process. Like you need to figure out what your process is through trial and error. But yeah, I think that that's true, Gail. It's an important point because it's not just sitting down for words. It's all the other things that go into the creative piece. Just like publishing isn't just writing. It's the entire other pie, you know.
And I think this also kind of goes into the last little bit I wanted to discuss. And you've all mentioned a little bit of each of it, but what are the tools that you use in your planning? And I know Corinne's got an example, you know, she can pull up and hold in front of the screen.
What do you have there?
For all of you.
I'm so glad you asked.
Please tell me about it.
This is actually, it's a planner. It's a planner. It's a planner.
Oh, is it a planner?
It's a planner. So
Did
it's
we
a
mention?
calendar, but it has stuff like down here for like social media and like checking off, like, did I go to my Facebook group? Did I go to my things? But the thing, it has like, this is the most important thing for me. This is my monthly, like the stuff, not Amazon ads and Facebook ads and all that stuff, but like if I bought newsletter advertising or if I'm in a promotion or if I'm running a contest and I, you know, because I always forget to do the winner and give them the prize. So like I keep track of all the things that I'm doing in my month, and I have all my newsletters and the calls to action in my newsletters, and if I'm doing a promotion or a sale. So on my monthly, this is the most important thing. So that in this way, it's geared toward authors. Otherwise, it's really just a day-to-day planner. But so doing this is a big deal for me. And then and this came about because there wasn't one out there. Like, and I've used the planner that you have, Venessa, and it's wonderful, but it follows the passion planner thing with the goals and the breakdowns and the 5-year plan and like, and I needed something a little bit more just wooden nails, hammering, like practical. And I also have a passion planner, but for writing and outlining, I have a whiteboard and I use the mountain arc and the plot diagram and all the different pieces, and that's what I do.
What about the rest of you?
I use the W plot, which is sort of the mountain plot, just reversed. I actually use something that's from a company called Planner Pads. And huh?
I've used them before in the past. They're very good.
Yeah, I've tried, like, I tried a bullet journal and I tried all the creative stuff, and I always end up using like sticky things on them. Like I do embellish them, but I also use a whole hell of a lot of yellow pads. But because I'm such a visual that I have to have it written out. And even if that means when the plan changes, I change the plan. But one of the things that revolutionized writing for me was I read a book about how to increase your writing speed. And one of the things the author recommended was you got to know the end. And I'm such a pantser.
Are you really?
I am by nature. I'm a pantser, but because I was under contract and deadline, I learned how to plot to a certain degree. And I learned through the years that I need to know the inciting incident and the big turning points. And I need to know a few other things. But one of the things that really made a difference for me was when I realized if I write the end scene, then I can fly. But that's just my process. I mean, and that was some hard won knowledge too, let me tell you. Getting to the 85, because I always would get to the 85% mark and go, I don't know what I'm doing.
No,
I would have all these threads and they would be really great. They would be really great. Yeah, I'm what, 20, 30 in now, 20, 30 manuscripts and 20 books in. And I'd get to that 85% mark and I'd have these great threads and everything would be wonderful. And then I'd sit for 2 weeks going,
What the hell happens?
oh my
so
God.
I
Yeah.
learned that I have to
currently
write
have-
the end.
I currently have 4 books at the 85% mark. The same.
Oh my gosh, I can't, I only work on one thing at a time. I can't do it. But you know, Jeannie, you reminded me, if I can add another tool, this past year, I have like a collection of book ones because I move on to the shiny new and I'm like, oh, I'll get to book 2. And when I finally get to book 2, I'm like, well, I don't remember anything that I wrote. So I started this, no, I can't, I'll have to flip over the title because it's my top secret pen name, but I've got like all the characters, all the places, all the things. And then I have like, and this is inspired by something I saw Amanda Lee shared on a thing, but like every chapter, what happened and who knew what when, and like, you know, wolf shifters and who was having banging hot relations when, and now I don't have to reread my books.
That's smart. Do you do that? Do you do that as you're writing the book?
Yeah.
Cool.
I do it after I have written. Like I have, like, if I have a map or an outline, or if I'm like, here's a timeline of some stuff. Once it's solidified, I'll put it in here. And I do this on like on a weekly basis. I go back because then I know I'm not going to delete something.
That's smart.
But yeah, it has saved me so much time.
Do you schedule your time to do that in your weekly schedule? Do you?
Yeah, this happens on weekends. Yes, this is on Sunday.
Gotcha. Okay. I just wanted to see if you did that, because that would be something I would have to do, because I would have to schedule that in, because I would totally like completely not do that. I'd be like, oh, I should do this thing. And then like every week would go by. I'll do it.
It saved me. Well, I read it's an academy story, so everyone has classes, and here's like the class schedule and who the teachers are, and I make up names as I go and things like that. So I have to make sure that I spread the names out through the alphabet. So I have this alphabet page, so because everybody in my books always has the initial R for some reason. So I have to make sure I don't keep doing that. But yeah, so I keep everything's on paper for me, but I keep a notebook that helps me with that. One notebook per series. It's been magic.
Do you story Bible, Gail? Because you have so many series.
Larry now story Bibles for me, because 12 current series, we actually did manage to kind of max out what I could keep in short-term memory. And, you know, I kept putting these notes in when I'd get the manuscript written, and I'd send it to him, and I would be, what color are his eyes? Which one of these guys is taller? In self-defense, he has started creating series Bibles, which is a wonderful idea. I have a paper calendar that I write things on, and a to-do list that I can't live without. And that's kind of what guides me. I go through the to-do list. If it's on the to-do list, it will get done. It may not get done today or this week, but it will eventually get crossed off. And that makes me feel really good. Sometimes if I accomplish something that wasn't on my to-do list, I'll write it on the to-do list just so I can cross it off and count it. Accomplishment. That's not cheating.
There's science behind that. There's the little endorphin hit. Do you and your husband share any kind of digital task management so that he knows that you're doing something or he's doing something?
Oh, hell no. You got to understand, I organize with piles. He has manila folders that all have printed labels on them.
Wow.
We have been married for 33 years. As long as we don't share an office or a filing system, we're fine. We just do not organize information in the same way. So no, that would not work at all. Somebody would be dead. And we've been doing this collaboration now for 10 years. And nobody's dead. So it's working. Oh yeah, I just don't. I've tried those, and it's not me. But he's great on that. So
I do story Bibles, but after the fact. Once the book is written, I go back and do the story Bible. if it's going to be something that's going to need that. It's not just a standalone, because yeah, I mean, the hair color, eye color, and like Corinne said, did I absolutely use everybody's name started with R or everybody's name started with T, or I have had to watch that. I have particular letters I'm very fond of.
Yes, it's
too.
funny. Yeah.
Me too.
No, I have new systems. I develop new systems for all the, whenever I have a problem, I have a new system now. It won't happen again because I don't have time to waste on this stuff.
Yes.
Mhm.
I'm a little bit of a nerd, so I do I showed this, like I usually only use about this much of it because I do it for like the yearly and quarterly planning, because I like the way like it's like refined goals, and like I can like block out, you know, the months, and like, oh, I think I'm going to do this month. I do everything in erasable ink. That's been a godsend, but I do a huge portion of my day-to-day, week-to-week, and even to some extent quarterly planning digitally in an app called Notion. And you can create relational databases. This is where my nerd comes out, y'all. So like I have, you know, my project, like this is the series, and in each project there's all the books. And then, okay, I have these tasks that I have to do for this book, and it's all cross-referenced. And it sounds really super complicated, and it took about a week to get it set up the way I wanted. But once I got it set up, it's super easy. But
You know, odd enough, I once scheduled our entire Disney vacation in a project management software to figure out the critical path for each of the kingdoms, so that I knew where.
I haven't never been, but I've heard that Disney requires that.
if you're going to be one thing, be efficient.
And when my children were lagging, I explained the burn rate to them. Which is how much money per minute. All right, guys.
We're walking.
This way.
For the writing, nothing that formal.
Yeah. For the series Bibles and stuff, I use Scrivener, and so whenever a new detail, each of my characters has their own little character sheet in a little folder with a little bit of backstory if I have that. And every time a new detail reveals itself, I'll run over there and be like, all right, she has a green streak in her hair today, you know, like during this time period or whatever, you know.
See, I have the printed outlines for the book, and I write all that stuff in the margins. And then I have a pile where they are all stacked like this on each other. So when I need to write
find it,
I go down the pile and, oh, there it is. So it's sort of the analog version of that, kind of.
It makes sense though, because you really started doing this, you know, there were not as many tools available when you started doing this. So like you get your system and it works, why break it, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, but
I used to highlight passages in the book and then put tabs, and the red was like for magical spells, that like when I made up words, and then other things were people's physical attributes. And the irony is, like back in the day when, you know, you first start writing and you look at all these people like, I have this, you know, interview your character and do your character one page sheet. And I'm like, I hate that. I don't want to do that. And now I'm like, I wish I had, because then I would have all this information. I wouldn't have to create it on the back end.
I made my own character sheets that has all this stuff, like including like political affiliation. What do they think about, you know, abortion, and you know, what do they think about this? What do they think about that? But I only fill out what's important.
Right.
You know, like if it's a main character, I'll go through a lot of stuff because I really want to know who this person is. But like, you know, most of the sheets is empty until I need it.
Right. You see, you don't box yourself in until you have to.
Right, exactly. Because you know, if I would get you 10, that it's going to be wrong. Like I'm going to be writing the story and it's going to be like the complete opposite of what I thought. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've covered a lot, and we could probably go another like 3 hours based on everything we've got. But I do want to go around one more time and let people know where to find you on the internet. And we'll start again with you, Jeannie.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Jeanne Adams. You can find me at jeannieadams.com on the web. You can find me on Twitter at Jeanne Adams. You can find me on Facebook at Jeanne Adams Author. and Instagram and Pinterest and, all the other crazy places. You can just Google me and find me.
All right, Venessa.
I'm at venessagiunta.com, which is all really weird because it's really weird spelling. But it's right there on the screen, so hopefully you'll be able to get there. You can find me on Twitter at Troilee, TROILEE. And also, if you're a writerly type and you want, you can do a search for the Writing Tribe on Facebook, and feel free to, find me there as well.
Perfect. Gail?
You can find me at gailzmartin.com. The Z is very important. And at morganbryce.com. Everything else is a version of those names. If you can't find it under Gail Z Martin, try GZ Martin. Morgan Bryce is usually run together. You might stick an author on the end, but I try to make it really easy to find me. Just go for the name.
Yeah, perfect. And finally, Corinne.
I am CorinneO'Flynn.com, and it's 2 N's in both my first and my last name because everybody wants to give me 2 R's. But I'm Corinne O'Flynn everywhere, so I'm easy to find.
All right. And I do want to thank all of you for coming. This has been a great panel, and I want to thank everyone for watching. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.